I guess you could say that I am a nervous traveler. I like traveling, I just don't like going anywhere. I have no desire to get on a boat, and neither am I enamored with airplanes. I'm not phobic about flying, but my legs are way too long for the seats in economy class. And the food, such as it is not the best. How is it that the situation can be so dire that you are excited when the stewardess gives you a small packet of pretzels, just enough food to remind you that you are hungry? The novelty of being trapped in a metal tube 35,000 feet above the ground for hours on end has never appealed to me. And the whole process, worrying about missing your flight, arriving at the airport 2 hours ahead of time, and security, airport security, has never liked me. You will find this hard to believe, but I have concluded that in a certain light I fit the profile of a terrorist or a gang member. Something about the natural guilty look on my face. Even when I don't set off the metal detectors, I'm routinely pulled out of line for what they call a random. Has that ever happened to you? When it happens to you, it doesn't feel very random. It feels like an intentional. The last time it happened was at the Toronto airport boarding a plane to Sydney, Nova Scotia. A plane load of Presbyterians headed for General Assembly. They pulled me out of line for a random search there in front of my colleagues from the church, many who thought I deserved this experience. They patted me down with the wand, checked for drug residue on my hands. You may want to be taking drugs if you're headed to General Assembly. A light anesthetic might help, but in this case I wasn't. The last time I was at Pearson Airport, I noticed they had one of those full-body scanners. Like a cylindrical telephone booth, you step inside and they make you raise your hands in the air, which is the posture of surrender. It lights up and reveals everything about you. It sees right through your clothes and your skin. I have not had the pleasure of a full-body scan, but I'm sure I will someday. Well, if you have had an awkward experience with airport security, or if you're like me and find the process a little unnerving, even intimidating, then Psalm 139 is probably not your favorite psalm. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before word is on my tongue, you know it completely. O Lord, you hem me in behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. You are known. And I think some of us hear that as both good news and bad news. God has searched you and knows you, every bit of you. You cannot hide. There is nothing you can stash away that he doesn't know about. And this idea may leave you feeling a little vulnerable, a little exposed, unnerved, depending on what you have to hide. Frederick Buechner has written a memoir entitled Telling Secrets, and in the opening chapter he talks about this business of being fully known. He writes, I have come to believe that by and large the human family all has the same secrets, which are both very telling and very important to tell. Telling in the sense that they reveal the central paradox of our condition. What we hunger for, perhaps more than anything else, is to be known in our full humanness. And yet that is often just what we also fear more than anything else. It is important to tell, at least from time to time, the secret of who we truly and fully are, because otherwise we run the risk of losing track of who we truly and fully are, and little by little come to accept instead the highly edited version which we put forth in hope that the world will find it more acceptable than the real thing. We guard carefully what we share with others about ourselves. We take great care in revealing who we really are, even to our closest friends and family members. And according to this psalm, not only does God know all about us, but we can't edit ourselves before God. The psalmist says that God hems us in front of us and behind us. God blocks our path. And if we try and run around and scurry off in another direction, there is God waiting for us. You might start to feel a little claustrophobic just thinking about this. There is something kind of menacing about it. God knows everything about me. I can't get away. I can't manage or script my image before God. I can't duck and cover. To be fully known often is what we fear more than anything else. But here is the paradox, because it is often what we hunger for more than anything else. Garrison Keillor tells a story of a bus trip to Minneapolis with his aunt. His Aunt Lois was young, more like a big sister to him, and they decided to play a game to pass the time, pretending that they did not know each other. And so they ask each other questions about who they are. And young Keillor made up a story about how he wasn't really from Lake Wobegon at all. In fact, his parents were famous actors in New York, and he was going there to meet them. It was Aunt Lois's turn to make up a story, and she began by saying that she didn't have any nephews. Well, Keillor says that this troubled him, and he said to his aunt, "I don't like this game. Say you know me." And she said, "I don't know you." And then with a little desperation in his voice, he said, "Say you know me." She said, "I don't know you. Sorry." And finally, when he is almost in tears, she touches his knee and says, "It's okay. I know you." We really do want to be known. And despite all of the defenses that we put up to protect ourselves, we really do want someone to know us. And this is the power that God has for us. Sometimes in circles you'll hear Christians talking about those who are lost, dividing the world up into two camps, the lost and the found. What does it mean to be lost? It is a word that can sound arrogant when you're talking about people you don't even know. But when we put it in the context of God's search for us, God's pursuit of us, when we apply it to ourselves, it can be a very powerful image. All of us, from time to time, get lost. We stray from our best intentions, our promises, from who we wish we were. We stray from our loves and our commitments. We stray from our better selves and from God. We get lost. And the good news here is the assurance that God doesn't give up on us, but follows us and finds us. C.S. Lewis once described his conversion using the image of a siege that is here in Psalm 139, that sense of being pursued and hemmed in by God. He talked about a long siege ending in a blessed surrender. This is how he describes it. You must picture me alone in that room, night after night, feeling, whenever my mind lifted even for a second from my work, the steady, unrelenting approach of God, whom I so earnestly desired not to meet. That which I greatly feared had at last come upon me. I gave in and admitted that God was God, and knelt and prayed. Perhaps that night, the most dejected and reluctant convert in all of England. And yet, looking back, Lewis gives thanks He writes, "I did not see then what is now the most shining and obvious thing, the divine humility which will accept a convert even on such terms. The prodigal son at least walked home on his own feet, but who can dully adore that love which will open the high gates to a prodigal who is brought in kicking, struggling, resentful, and darting his eyes in every direction for a chance of escape? The words compelle entrare in the parable, compel them to come in, have been so abused by wicked men that we shudder at them, but properly understood, they plumb the depth of the divine mercy. The hardness of God is kinder than the softness of men, and God's compulsion is our liberation. Is it not what we all finally want? To be found? Even those of us who are so desperately trying to hide, those of us who spend a lot of time working on the image that we will present to the world, afraid that the world will find us out. Don't we want to be found, to be fully known?